Hello, it's time for another Gita video. Today we're going to be looking at Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verses 19 to 23. One whose efforts are free of lust of result, who gives his actions as sacrifice to the divine. He will be called wise by the awakened ones. Having given up lust of result, being satisfied without any false security, such a person will be in non-doing, even though he takes many actions. Focusing the mind and the soul without lust of result, giving up all sense of possession, only working for what is needed to maintain the body and soul. One doing so will never go wrong. Fulfilled by the good things that come of their own accord, beyond duality, free of jealousy, equally steady in success or failure. One doing so may take action and remain free from reaction. One who is detached from the elements, who is free, whose wisdom is in awareness, who acts for the sake of gratitude. His work is entirely unified. So in the last video, we were talking about that quality of what brings you into unity, that moment of stepping beyond that self-referencing perspective and becoming one with the whole, so to say. And in these verses, it gives you some more practical instruction, you could say, on how to accomplish that. And you notice that there's a repeated phrase there that I've translated in this version of the Gita as free of the lust of result. Now, what do all these verses suggest? Because they're not saying clearly that the point is to give up your possessions and go live like a monk and not care about the world and things like that. Because remember, the premise of the whole Gita starts with Arjuna wanting to go and become a monk and give up his possessions and not care about the world. So it's obviously not that which Krishna is advocating for here, which makes it very ironic that over the last many centuries, you've had all kinds of people giving up all their possessions and going and living like monks in the name of Krishna. That seems like getting exactly the opposite message of what was intended. So the key here is that idea that Krishna presented in the last verses about being able to do without doing, accept action or inaction for its own sake, inaction being itself a kind of action, without ulterior motives, acting and not reacting. You're not responding based on your programmed instincts to what's going on as stimulus outside you. You are not putting yourself at the center of the whole scene. You're just being natural. So you can act, but not out of this desire to control the end result. One of the keys in these verses, and really if you can grasp this part of it, then you get the whole deal, is when Krishna says, who acts for the sake of gratitude, his work is entirely unified. So gratitude is a very big deal. What is the point of gratitude? What does that mean here? Well, you have to consider that none of what you're experiencing in your life is something that's owed to you. The universe doesn't owe you anything, right? You don't necessarily owe the universe anything either, because you didn't do anything special to be where you are, nor did you ask to be where you are, right? And a lot of the problems that human beings encounter in being able to achieve that state of union comes from one of those two notions. The notion that the universe owes you something, or that you owe it something, right? So gratitude here is about being grateful for the experience that you're going through. And in this context, we have to understand lust of result. It doesn't mean don't do things. We've already established over and over again in the previous verses that it's impossible for you not to do things. You're always doing something. Even the choosing not to do something is still an action. So you give your actions as sacrifice to the divine. You do what you do without the goal being that if I do this, then God will give me such a thing, or the universe will give me such a thing, or I'll get the result I want, I'll get this thing, and then everything will be perfect, or something like that. Each thing as you're doing it, each action as you're taking it, you're expressing a gratitude for just being there and for the experience, right? You don't have to own existence. You have to just be in it. And if you can get that part, then suddenly it doesn't become about where you're going. What you're doing right now, this very action, your life in this moment, becomes its own reward. It becomes its own security too. So you don't do things out of fear that what might happen later, or what won't happen later, or what could go wrong, or what you'd be punished for, things like that. You take actions based on this inner true will, without lust of result. You're not doing it for something later. You're doing it for doing it right now. And people say, well, then what's the point? Why would I do these things, right? Well, why not just not do anything, right? Well, again, this is where that genuine sense of gratitude comes in. As you cultivate in a spiritual practice, if you are connecting to this bigger picture, and if you're stepping out of your self-referential, self-serving kind of perspective, then it becomes inevitable that you, on the one hand, realize that there's really nothing that you are required to do, but that it also means that you have a natural purpose, right? That what you are meant to do is simply to at every moment do the very best you can. You have that duty. And it's not a duty to the people around you necessarily, though that's very nice if the things you do help the people around you. It's not a duty to God or something like that. It's a duty to your own existence and being there, because doing your will, excelling at what you're doing, trying to do your very best. It doesn't mean perfection, because the goal is never to get perfection, because you're never going to get perfection, because existence is inherently imperfect. It's inherently flawed. It's not to get over suffering, because in existence is suffering. There's always going to be good things and bad things that are happening. So you want to be equally steady in success or failures. Equally steady doesn't mean you don't care if you succeed or fail. It doesn't mean that you don't feel hurt if things hurt you. It doesn't mean that you don't feel happy if nice things happen that you enjoy. But it means that you're equally steady within yourself. You're equally conscious, you're equally present, you're equally being there, you're equally going through it. And in whatever circumstance, whether it's something bad, whether it's something good, you are trying to do your very best to fulfill your individual will in that moment and in that situation. You're not doing it for the end goal, and therefore you're not doing it for the reaction you are hoping to achieve. That is lust of result, this idea that you can control cause and effect, that what you do has to get you something, or has to get you somewhere, or get you away from something or somewhere. And if you get out of that frame of mind, then instead you're doing something to do something right there. And that changes all of the context of what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. And it doesn't mean you can't have plans for the future, but you're not doing what you're doing right now for that future imagined end goal. You're doing it because right now you have an opportunity to unite to life, to unite to existence. The only way to unite to God is to unite to life and where you are now. So if you connect to this place and this moment and this body and this action that you are taking, then you're uniting to God. If you're trying to get away from this, whether it's to some fantasy you're imagining, or you just want to get away from life, or whether you're trying to advance or retreat, then you're not uniting. You're escaping, right? One way or the other. So the answer here is to detach from that lust of result, that goal that you imagine. You go beyond duality. There's not you fighting against the world. There's you being in your little place in the world, in this big context. You don't have to be at the center of the universe. You just have to be where you are and do the very best at everything you do. That's it for today. If you like this video, please subscribe to this series and to the other playlists in the YouTube channel. And feel free to get in touch if you're interested in a more one-on-one spiritual teaching in the context of the Yifa Society. Thank you very much.